In 1863, the two armies of the North and South collided in the crossroads town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. In its aftermath, 51,000 casualties, along with 5,000 dead horses, littered the farmlands. The town and its people would never be the same again. Today, Gettysburg honors its past with its meticulously maintained battlefield and monuments, and it celebrates its peaceful and fun-loving present. You will find some of the best food, libation, and the friendliest people you'll ever meet. I'm Mary Jo Powell, introducing you to the stars and bars of Gettysburg. In this video, we'll give you a tour of the battlefield, show you where to stay, eat, drink, and experience some of the nightlife and the people who are the stars in the bars you'll encounter on this Civil War journey. I'm Mary Jo Powell, and these are the stars and bars of Gettysburg. They say all roads end somewhere. Here in Gettysburg, 10 major roads converge on this spot, the town square. And that's how both armies ended up here. On July 1st in 1863, major forces under General Henry Heath were scouting the lines west of Chambersburg, with orders not to engage any federal forces they may encounter. As Northern cavalry, the eyes and ears of the armies under the command of General John Buford spotted Heath's Confederate forces, word was sent back to Commanding General George Gordon Meade, and the primary forces of the Union Army advanced. At this spot on the Chambersburg Pike, 3 miles west of town, the first shot was fired by Union Lieutenant Marcellus Jones of the 8th Illinois Cavalry, and the fight was on. Rebel forces advanced as infantry reinforcements arrived under Major General John F. Reynolds of the Union First Corps. The Confederate assault down the Chambersburg Pike was repulsed, but in these woods, General Reynolds was fatally wounded. Now, among the things to look for on the first day's battlefield is this artillery piece. It's a 3-inch ordnance gun at the base of Buford's statue. Gun number 233 is one of 4 3-inch ordnance rifles of Battery A, 2nd U.S. Artillery. It rests on the spot where they fired the opening artillery salvo of that pivotal battle. On the afternoon of July 1st, this unfinished railroad cut served as protection to the Confederate units advancing in the field, but became a trap when Federal troops attacked the cut. Troops under Confederate Brigadier General Joseph Davis's brigade were trapped as Union troops of the 6th Wisconsin and the 84th and 95th New York attacked from the south. 160 out of 450 men of the Union forces fell in that charge. But as the embankment of the cut was so steep, the Confederates found it impossible to return fire. Many Confederates were killed and over 200 were captured. Buford used the cupola of this building, the Lutheran Seminary, as a lookout post. Observing the advance of Confederate forces along this ridgeline, directing fire on those opposing forces. Elements of the 1st and 11th Corps occupied a tenuous position along McPherson's and Oak Ridges, and had managed to hold those positions since the mid-morning. Federal reinforcements, however, were slow to arrive. The Army of Northern Virginia, by contrast, was growing in strength at an almost exponential rate. Arriving from the north, the divisions of Generals Robert Rhodes and Jubal Early threatened the Federals' exposed left. In the late afternoon, Rhodes' division smashed into the 1st Corps troops on Oak Ridge. Seen at the top of the hill is the Eternal Peace Memorial, dedicated on July 3, 1938, commemorating the 75th anniversary of the battle. President Franklin D. Roosevelt presided over 250,000 attendees at that Gettysburg reunion dedication. And of those attendees, 1,800 were actual Civil War veterans, ranging in age from 88 to 112. The natural gas light burns as a reminder of lasting peace and unity of a nation. As the battle progressed, troops from both sides received reinforcements. The Confederate movement forced the Union back into town, and house-to-house fighting took place. Several remainders of the action can be seen if you know where to look. Cannonballs embedded in buildings and walls riddled with bullet holes remained from the Confederate takeover of the town. As the sun sets, the battle ends, with both sides positioning themselves in a fishhook configuration. The North around Culp's Hill down through Cemetery Ridge, the South along Seminary Ridge. Our second day's trek takes us to a place called Spangler Springs, where Union and Confederate troops drank the cool water from the flowing springs while nursing their wounds. As you climb the hill, more monuments dot the landscape, indicating the positions of the two armies. After visiting Culp's Hill, we venture to the far left side of the Federal line, which takes us to another well-known hill on the Gettysburg battlefield. This is known as Little Round Top, where on the second day, the Federal troops were ordered to hold this position at all costs. On the extreme left was the 20th Maine, led by Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, a college professor who, after running out of ammunition, ordered a bayonet charge against the advancing rebel troops, saving the Federal left from collapsing. A statue of General G.K. Warren, who recognized the significance of occupying this high ground, now stands here. One tradition of visiting Little Round Top is rubbing the nose of Colonel Paddy O'Rourke. It's said to bring the luck of the Irish. So many hidden findings on the battlefield, like rock carvings. Here's an example behind the 91st Pennsylvania on Little Round Top. Far below, visitors can see an outcrop or series of rocks known as Devil's Den. Confederates sought protection in these rocks from the Yankee troops on Little Round Top, and taking sniper positions fired back. While some were successful in their endeavors, others didn't fare as well. Rebel attempts to take the high ground held by the Union forces led this land to become known as the Valley of Death. From Devil's Den, the road takes us to the wheat field, where men from the Federal lines advanced to secure the high ground, running into Longstreet's Confederates hidden in the woods. A fierce battle drove the Federals back from the peach orchard to their original position. By the end of the day, 6,000 Union and Confederate soldiers lay strewn across this position. The Evergreen Cemetery, Gettysburg's public cemetery, is situated along the southeastern slope of the Federal line. In the early evening, Confederate troops launched an attack on this position, charging uphill, reaching the crest, and engaging in hand-to-hand combat. As darkness set in, the fighting continued. As Union troops were sent in to reinforce the cemetery hill, the rebels fell back in defeat around 10 p.m. Starting out on the third day's battlefield, we drive along the line of Union forces. Here we see the landscape filled with monuments and artillery. During the battle, there were 626 pieces of artillery. 354 were Union and 272 Confederate. During the battle, it was estimated that 569 tons of artillery shells were fired by opposing armies. With approximately 1,400 monuments on the battlefield, the largest and most prominent is this one, the Pennsylvania Monument. Dedicated on September 27, 1910, the surrounding tablets bear the names of more than 34,000 Pennsylvanians, who made up more than 1/3 of the Union forces here in Gettysburg. A winged bronze figure on top of the memorial represents the goddess of victory and peace. On the other side of the field, monuments to the Confederate forces tell the story of the brave men of the South who made the gallant charge across nearly 1 mile of open field during the third day's battle. The most dominant is the Virginia Memorial that bears the figure of General Robert E. Lee, mounted on his favorite horse, Traveler. It was here that Lee observed Pickett's charge. At about noon on July 3, 1863, about 150 Confederate cannons began shelling the Union lines, hoping to soften up the Union position. The Federal artillery, about 100 cannons, responded, and for nearly 2 hours the ground shook. After the first few minutes, Confederate gunners lost their aim, and many shells began to sail beyond the Union lines. While the overshooting caused chaos in the rear, the front-line troops and artillery the Confederates hoped to destroy were relatively unscathed. As the artillery barrage ended, Pickett's men, joined by other units, emerged from a line of trees. Their front was about a mile wide. More than 12,000 men, arranged behind their regimental flags, began to march across the fields. At the command of General George Pickett, the Confederates advanced as if on parade, and the Union artillery opened fire. Artillery shells designed to explode in the air and send shrapnel downward began to kill and maim advancing soldiers. As a line of Confederates advanced, the Union gunners switched to deadly canister shot, metal balls that tore into troops like gigantic shotgun shells. Ultimately, the Confederates advanced to a zone where Union riflemen could fire into the charge. As the Confederates came close to the Union lines, they focused on a cluster of trees that would become a grim landmark. Nearby, a stone wall made a 90-degree turn called the Angle. It also became an iconic spot on the battlefield. Despite the withering casualties and hundreds of dead and wounded left behind, several thousand Confederates made it to the Union defensive line. Brief and intense scenes of combat, much of it hand-to-hand, occurred. But the Confederate attack had failed. The attackers who survived were taken prisoner. The dead and wounded littered the field. Witnesses were stunned by the carnage. An entire mile of field covered with bodies. In all, with 164,000 men fighting here in Gettysburg, 51,000 were listed as casualties during the 3 days of fighting. 8,000 dead, 33,000 wounded, and 10,000 missing in action. The battle had ended in 3 days. Proper burial would take much longer. A 17-acre plot, part of the field in which they fought, was chosen as the burial site for the Union dead. Almost 3,500 Union soldiers rest in this cemetery. Of that number, nearly half are unknown. Dedication ceremonies took place on November 19, 1863. President Lincoln took only 2 minutes to deliver what would become known as his Gettysburg Address. When you're in the mood to shop, or you want a bite to eat, take a walk down Carlisle Street. Here are some of our favorite picks. There's a shop for every taste in Gettysburg.
The Union Cigar Club is the name of the store, but it's a retail store where people can come in and enjoy a fine cigar. Opened it 9 years ago because they threw me out of all the bars to smoke in, so my mission was to break even and smoke my own cigars. Probably become the social center of the town in terms of people who stop by and sit around and smoke a cigar and converse.
A few blocks up the street, meet Eric Dorr, curator of the Gettysburg Museum.
We're an American history museum, so our artifacts go as far back as an ancient Egyptian mummy, and it goes up to current day and everything in between. Some of the other really unique items we have, though, we have Abraham Lincoln's wallet, we have a lot of items tied to Lincoln. We have John Wilkes Booth's splint. We have a lot of items from World War I and World War II. You know, Gettysburg was the U.S. Tank Corps training camp during World War I. We have a lock of George and Martha Washington's hair. A lot of people are very fascinated by our Hitler items. We have a lot of items that were taken from his home in Berchtesgaden, the Berghof, and brought here by American soldiers, so we have some of his personal items. We also have a piece of the couch where he killed himself with his blood on, which is a really unique item.
The Farnsworth House offers historical rooms at an inn with its own Civil War past.
The Union Army was at the top of the hill. The Confederate Army drove them through the town and drove them to the top of the hill. And then the Confederates took over the house and houses near here, and they used it as a sharpshooter's nest. Okay? And of course, every time they'd fire a round from the garret, the Union Army at the top of the hill would see the puff of smoke, and of course they drew fire on the house. So we have over 150 bullet holes in the side of the house. We're the only Civil War themed restaurant in the area. And so any history buffs or anything, it really draws them. So also military people. West Point comes here a lot. The menu that's designed early type of peanut soup, pumpkin fritters, spoon bread's very popular. That's an old Southern dish that we use. So we use some of the dishes are early American. We have 11 rooms. We have 5 in the house, and we have 4 in the garden area. And they're, of course, the Victorian period, and that's what the decor is. And we keep them pretty full. And we're also noted for hauntings, too. Okay. We like to be known for history first, and then ghosts second.
Everyone needs a souvenir. For the finest selection, try the Union Drummer Boy, authentic museum-quality Civil War artifacts.
We specialize in original Civil War artifacts, muskets and swords and revolvers and items that the soldiers would have had during the American Civil War. We've had some very special artifacts. Currently I have a hat that was worn by a Confederate general at Gettysburg and a tree that has 16 cannonball fragments in it from the Gettysburg campaign. We currently have several thousand items on exhibit, so it's ranging from soldiers' letters and documents to the hard artifacts they would have had with them in camp and in battle.
If you're going to visit Gettysburg, you must eat at Ernie's. It's a Gettysburg tradition. Their hot dog recipe dates back to 1921. I'm going to get the Texas Wiener. R.J. Gibson's studio, authentic Civil War photography. I'm going to get my picture taken. I've heard about this, you know. They say the trick is to be dignified. I can smile, but I can't show my teeth. Wish me luck.
This is called the wet plate collodion process, the same process that was used in the 1860s. Now, this starts out by using something called collodion. I have to make all these solutions myself. This is a mixture of nitrocellulose, ether, 190 proof alcohol. You had to be as much of a chemist as you were an artist back in the day. Now, collodion was first used as a liquid bandage. They still use it for some medical procedures today. I take that same raw collodion, I add the various chemicals to it to create this solution, which I'm then going to make light sensitive. So now that I've created an emulsion, what I'm going to do is bring this to the dark room and immerse it into a tank of silver nitrate. This way, please. All right, let all that sort of nice and out like that. Turn a little bit at an angle this way. Let's place your hand right up there. Good. Arch the back nice and tall. Very good. Not quite arch so much. A little bit forward more for me. There. Okay. Now coming behind you is a headrest. This was used behind everybody standing in a photograph back then. This was to give you a reference point. If you stay against this, you will stay in focus for us. Moving things, okay. All right, absolutely still. I'm going to go grab the plate. When I come back out, I will give you some final instructions. Okay, off I go to the dark room. Now listen carefully. This is unlike any photograph you've ever had taken before. This is going to take about 17 seconds to take this image. All I'm going to do is remove the lens cap and count. So during that time, it is okay to blink your eyes, it's okay to breathe, but you can't move at all. Listen still, and counting. Notice the image is reversed, upside down and backwards is how I'm looking at you in the image here. So tintypes are always a backwards image. This is my fixer. This is potassium cyanide, the same chemistry they used back in the 1800s. Now this is unlike any other photographic process before or since. Okay, here we go. This young lady is time travel. This is the closest you'll ever get to living in the 1860s. What's happening is the fixer is dissolving all the unexposed silver. So underneath that negative image is a positive photograph. You just need to coax it out of there a little bit. You can imagine how amazing it was in the 1860s to see something like this.
Oh, sure.
You could see why the American Indians thought they were truly stealing your soul. Okay, here it comes. And there you are, 150 years ago. It's like looking at your ancestors.
I played the pump and I took them home and I watered whiskey down. I talked to horses.
Welcome to Gettysburg, a drinking town with a history problem.
Well, we've been to 2 bars so far.
And I heard them say that Jimmy's making money far away. Some people left for heaven without warning. So we walked into the station in the rain, and we kissed them as we put them on the train, and we sang in the song, time long gone, no we knew that we could see them again.
I took all the ideas from all the bars that I used to drink in and enjoyed when I was growing up in Ireland, so tried to make sure that it was as authentic as possible, not a cookie-cutter Irish pub. So it's more that, I mean, we have a saying, it's kill, count, chuck, is crack, which is Gaelic for music, talk, and fun. So that's the type of thing that we go for, you know. The food, Josh, the chef, does a phenomenal job on himself, but most of the food, or a lot of the staples on the menu are family recipes, traditional stuff that we grew up eating at home. I've always said, you know, give you 4 walls and a roof. You make it what it is. I mean, you say the people that come in are the stars of the bar. You know, those are the ones that make it what it is.
I moved here because I spent a weekend up here and I just fell in love with the whole town. I love the history of the Civil War, but it's the atmosphere here and the people that make it so much more.
It is certainly a drinking town with history, probably.
It's a very friendly environment. Like you're kind of treated like family here. Like no one's rude, no one's mean. When we like went to college in a big like city-esque area, and where like no one really knew anyone, and they kind of treated you like poop. And like here, you know, it's very friendly and family-esque.
I love it. I'm actually considering moving here, so because I was a history major, so I love the history, and like she said, the people are very welcoming and just it's a beautiful town.
They took the road for God knows in the morning.
We've only scratched the surface of the many sights of Gettysburg during our visit. Come experience Gettysburg for yourself and learn about the sights, sounds, and the stars and bars of this historic Pennsylvania town. I'm Mary Jo Powell. Thanks for joining us.